acts. And the acts is nothing but a very, very clear, detailed requirements and the scope, so that once you get onto the execution phase, there is no ambiguity and there is no confusion as is it part of the scope or is not part of the scope, right? Just put a thumbs up if you have understood this. Excellent, excellent. Now, what do we do? What are the various objectives of the session? Quickly, for the next 45 minutes, I will go through uh, the broad objectives. I won't get into the real details because you are all experts in that. But what I'm going to do is sort of a refresh about the various software engineering activities you would be required to do it in your project. The first activity is define scope precisely for functional and non-functional requirements. When you talk about functional requirement, these are all the business requirements. This is exactly what a particular application could be, a web app, could be an Android app, or could be any other application, is expected to deliver in terms of various functionalities. So you need to be very clear about the functional requirement. Non-functional requirements is the technology perspective of the product or the app or the software you're developing. On what technology, what database, if it is a responsive websites, what are the responses required, what are the security parameters. I'll get into small details in the next slide, but basically there is a clear demarcation between a functional requirement and a non-functional requirement. What you do with the requirements next phase is all about writing a well-defined use cases and drawing a use case diagram. Please give a thumbs up if you understand what a use case diagram and what a use case modeling is all about. Super. So everyone is an expert on that. Excellent. So I'm hoping that you can take up breaking down the PRD, which is already there with you, to a use case diagram and use case modeling. Finally, what you also do is you would be applying the modeling techniques like user stories, UML models, data flow diagrams, state transition diagrams, state diagrams, everything you would be doing it as a part of your project. You would also be expected to build and start using the use case template. I have created one sample template which will be shared with you. See if it makes sense to you, or you can further improve on that. But definitely that has to be something which you should be using it as a part of your requirements engineering and scope management. So you have to build them right, diagramming the various use cases as a model. You need to also clearly articulate and document how an accepted scope, which is nothing but a set of use case diagrams and use case models along with the ERDs. Next step is getting into the design phase. And finally, once you have done the use case modeling and the design of it, you have to get into this final step of testing your scope to the original requirements and say, okay, this is the original requirement. These are all the 20, 30, 40, 100 use cases I have built, functional and non-functional, and everything is linked with the original PRD. There is no functionality which I have missed it out, and there is a sign-up, and it is completely tested before it gets into the next phase of design and development. So, all you have is a PRD. What does it state? It articulates the business requirement. It creates the objective of that particular application you are going to build. Nothing beyond that. Maybe a high-level requirement, but it doesn't get into the details of what actually does this application in terms of various business processes, various functional elements, and various technology elements to it. So you need to break down the PRD into various use cases and models. A very quick question to all of you. Can you define what is a use case, and can use cases be further broken down into smaller use cases? A quick chat for about 30 seconds. What is the use case and can it be broken down? Anybody start typing out your answers?
Yes, students, start giving out the responses. You're able to hear us, right? Hope the screen is visible, everyone.
Okay.
Yes, chat is enabled, guys.
What is a use case and what are the broad elements it contains? Can you just check it out if you can type out the answers?
Yes, guys. Now you can give out the answers.
Use case describes of a user interaction, visual way of how users interact. What else? Structured description of an actor, what the user wants, system, problem it solves.
Which types of user interacts with the system?
Yeah, fair enough. I think you broadly got a view about it. Please brush up your skills on use cases. I think use case is not necessarily a front end. Say, for example, there is a data processing application. There is no front end other than uploading or downloading the data. There is no user interaction. There is no UI. But there is still a lot of functional requirement which have to be executed at the back end. Every activity which works with certain actors, there is a data flow diagram. There is what is called as the entity relationships, and there is a certain processing. Everything which has a very specific task to be done, like user login, it's a use case. User delete, it's a use case. User update, it's a use case. Read, write, access. It is the fundamental atomic level of breakdown of any activity which either user does or between two entities of an application does is a use case. It is the smallest level of an activity in an application. Okay, fair enough. Thank you, guys. You can stop chatting. I pretty much got what I'm looking for. So what is requirement in a use case is okay. Yeah, you can. I think I got it. So what you required in this case is you take your functional requirements and your PRD. In many cases, it's both the same. Start breaking down into use cases. You may not know what are those use cases are. So it's very important for you to either imagine or talk to the business user who has given you that PRD on a series of conversations. You break down the entire requirements document into a set of use case and models. This is how the users are going to interact with the application, is what our use case model should do. Once the use case models are done, you need to get onto the next phase, which is called as the design phase. The design phase is also talks about how do you convert the non-functional requirements to a design specification in terms of UI, in terms of technology architecture, in terms of the database, in terms of the backend, in terms of security, in terms of data access. All these are part of the design specs which you need to look for it. Finally, once you have the use cases, the functional, the non-functional, and the design cases, you need to start writing the test cases. Nowadays, what happens is in the modern agile world of development, there is a concept called as a test-driven methodologies. The test-driven methodology is nothing but the use cases are so written that they themselves will end up playing the role of a test case. So you'll have a set of test cases. In many cases, is the same use cases, or in some cases, you can have a separate set of test cases. So your PRD, which is from section 1 to 70, needs to be expanded into use cases and models before it becomes into a design specification, right? So this is a summary of what is a functional requirement and what is a non-functional requirement. I just quickly repeat what I said. A functional requirement is all about what the system does. What does it behave? What are the various features and what are the various options? So it, I just took an example of spend sense. You'll have add, delete, expense entries. What is the amount? What is the category? What is the date? So these are all various granular level of use cases which will happen in your web app. In case of one more scenario I took it is like user sets monthly and weekly budgets. For this week I'm going to spend some 1,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees. That's a use case. So how do you get to that granular level of details, which is a part of an activity a user will have with the application? In case of employee performance, you are ranking an employee or rating an employee in terms of quality and timelines on a 1 to 5 rating. There's no further breakdown of it. So that is the smallest level of use case you would be taking up. So in both the cases, you need to get into the smallest level of detail and start documenting in your use case diagram and use case model document. In case of functional, non-functional, it is pretty much the overall performance of your application. How well the system behaves in terms of when it is put to use. What are the quality attributes? You say that functionally it is a great application, but it's a performance wise it's a pretty bad. It's non-responsive. It hangs. It cannot handle more than 5 users. So some of these are technical limitations, not a functional limitation. So these you have to categorize under 4 to 5 buckets. Mm. without which your project cannot. Document, just to ensure that whatever is there in the PRD is covered in your use case diagram. And tomorrow, when you start doing the user testing or unit testing, you need to ensure that every use case or every requirement is traced back to the original PRD, because that is where it all started. What is including, what is in scope has to be traced, every bit of it, to the PRD. So you need to create what is called as a requirements traceability matrix. Many of the project management tools will provide that as a part of the job tracking and work breakdown structures. But I would recommend that because yours is a very small project and you are everything, right? From requirements to design to architect to project manager. I would say a simple Excel sheet should do it. A lot of tools available which can do requirements traceability. A lot of AI tools are also available. You can start using them as a part of the RTA. So requirements traceability matrix is very important. It's the template which I have shared you is a pretty robust template, very simplistic. You can track it using your Excel sheet, and every line item can be an hyperlink to another sheet or could be a workbook, and which clearly it integrates upwards and downwards. Now that you have the set of accepted use cases, what are the various steps to be followed after
You
that?
have the
How the scope document feeds into the next phases, and what are the next phases? The next phases is that if your application is yeah, sorry, there have been some network issues. So it's very important for you to understand that a complete scope document needs to get into the next phase of design. There is an interactive application, then you need to start writing down the wireframes and the screen flows. Then you need to do the architectural design, the component level, how the components interact. Then you need to do the database design in terms of the data structures, the database layouts, the primary database, the secondary database, where the databases are stored, whether it's an off-campus, in-campus, cloud-based. Then you have the various APIs, you have various integrations. And are you using any third party, APIs like whether the time or, KYC, Aadhaar, whatever it is, I don't know. But if there is any third party APIs to be required at what point in time and which application is going to invoke those APIs, or your application itself is an API for someone else. All these third-party interfaces designs have to be clearly articulated, including the socket programming and everything. And this is how a scope document feeds into the design phase of your project. And please understand that the design phase also has to be approved by the technology team of your consumer, in this case your mentor, and get it approved and say, hey, I approve the technology stack in terms of the UI, in terms of the architecture, in terms of the database, in terms of the network security, in terms of various third-party tools. Once you get a sign off and baseline it, you get on to the next phase of execution. So what is also important, as a part of the overall project is you need to have a very clear testing requirements, also part of the acceptance criteria. As I said previously, the use case diagram can be so written well, it can actually be a test case document also. But in some organizations, they have an independent testing. They look at your use case diagram and come up with their own test conditions, boundary conditions, test conditions, what is in scope, what is not in scope. You need to clearly articulate what are the elements of functional testing, what are the exception testing, what are the negative scenario testing. You also need to simulate scenarios for non-functional testing in terms of response time, in terms of database, what happens in case of a network failure. All those exception conditions, the boundary conditions have to be tested. And finally, you're getting into the integration testing and user acceptance testing. When you talk about the user acceptance testing, it means that this is exactly what your user is going to accept once you deliver the project and say, this is what you wanted me to do it, this is what I have delivered. So user acceptance testing criteria has to be part of the overall testing, not only at a unit testing, it has to be at the integration testing as well as the final acceptance testing. So in terms of the completeness of the scope, you need to have functional requirements completed, all the use cases completed, you have all the non-functional requirements completed, you have the scope, boundary defined, what is in scope and what is not in scope. You also need to clearly document the technology requirements so that a customer knows under what conditions this application is going to work. Okay? So this is a summary of what you're going to do. I think for your project, I don't see more than 30 minutes of time. Maybe it'll take about an hour. But I think it's very important for you to take a use case, write it down, model it, and get your use cases approved. Take time, but get into some serious details about it. And that's how you learn the concept and that's how you build your skills on it. I'm going to share that requirements template with all of you. Just have a look at it and feel free to modify it, but don't cut down on the various headings I have indicated in your template. So finally, what are the key takeaways for the session today? Is that you have functional requirements. Finally, now you understand what a requirements engineering is. Right from the PRD, simple one statement of a requirement, you've actually broken it down to use cases, DFDs, ERDs, state transition diagram, and everything which is functional and non-functional. Please use that use case template with all the sub mandatory fields. Use all the four modeling techniques mandatorily. Follow the 5-step acceptance process mandatorily. Create that requirements traceability back to your PRD is very important for you to trace it. Finally, ensure that whatever is being there is testable. So that means create the testing scope right from the unit testing to the requirements testing to unit testing to design testing. right up to the integration testing and user acceptance testing. So these are something, uh, I think this pretty much summarizes what the session for the day is. Uh, it's going to be a lot of paperwork. Documentation is very important in a software development space. Even though you are doing it on an agile methodology, it's extremely important that you follow all these steps mandatory. Okay. So yeah, I think that's pretty much is the session. Any questions we can take for the next couple of minutes and before we break up. Any questions, please type it out on the chat box. So another 30 seconds, or else we can wrap it up. Yes, you will get this PPT. Don't worry. It was Nitish, right? Yes, you will get and everyone will get the PPT along with the templates of requirements document. Okay, thank you very much for your time and all the best. Start working on the templates once you get it. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Yeah. So so the PPT and the other resources will be shared with you through the platform. Okay. Yes. So in subsequent meeting, I will guide you through so where do you find it and how do so where to find the PRD documents and so where to find the templates and all those things. Okay. Yes. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Next session is important.
Please.
Would it ask is the only question or other also having?
We'll be having today, tomorrow, and next tomorrow.
No, today they attend this one session, it's done, or they have two more sessions.
On the same topic, reputations on